Good day, parents, caregivers, friends, neighbors. Welcome yet to another conversation. Today, we will be talking about our children, but specifically nutrition. We have Chantel with us. We are so grateful to have you at SAEP and have this conversation with us and just enlighten our parents about nutrition, which is it's quite an important topic that one needs to dissect and our parents to understand fully. Because when we talk about nutrition, we talk about it so loosely, and at that, parents often say that as long as I'm feeding my child one or two meals, that is nutritious enough. But we want to say to them, here is a person with a vast of knowledge in nutrition they can hear from. Right? So if you can just kindly introduce yourself and just talk about who you are, what you have been up to, your journey in the child nutrition, and and you have dedicated your entire career to it, so it's your time to shine.
Thank you so much, Glenda, and thank you again for the invitation from SAEP. So, formally, I am Dr. Chantel Witten. I'm a registered dietitian with about 30 years experience, having worked in hospitals, having worked in the primary healthcare facilities. I've also worked in the private sector, and now I find myself with Ilifa Labantwana, and I'm leading on responsive caregiving. And part of that responsive caregiving is about nutrition. And then, of course, I also come into the room as a mom. I have 2 kids. I've also spent a lot of time with young kids in programming both in South Africa through the Road Child booklet, as well as programming internationally. So I've worked in Bangladesh. And in Bangladesh, we actually had a program called Life and Livelihoods. So it was about working and earning, and then that working and earning money, how do we apply it for children for optimal health and growth?
Well, as I said to you, that your CV is quite impressive, and you have done so much deep work within the space, from research that I've seen. Also being also lecturing, yes, the primary healthcare space. I was quite impressed that you have stuck it out. For me, you're a person that knows her calling. And is that to educate? Which form is it? It does not matter, but you are in the space to say, I am here and I'm dedicating myself for the children of this country. So with working in the space of children, we often talk about the first 1,000 days. That is quite important. And what does that period actually mean, and why do we consider this window for child development quite important in the lens of nutrition?
So, Glenda, we have rapid periods of growth. And that happens in those days. That is called the first 1,000 days. It's the 9 months of pregnancy. So if you take 9 times 30, that gives you roughly about 270 days. And then the child's first year and second year. So if you take 365 plus 365, it kind of makes the 700 that you need to make up the 1,000 days. And it's got to do with rapid growth and growth that you don't catch up to. Growth that only happens in that time. So from conception, when the mother conceives her baby, the mother's health influences how that fetus grows. And the interesting thing is that the brain is already forming. You kind of develop from the inside out. And in that first trimester, what is really important for moms during pregnancy is that, one, her micronutrient status must be good. And what does micronutrient status mean? It means that we have these nutrients that we need in small amounts, but we need it every day. And we must have it adequately. So the ones that moms would know that when they're pregnant, they go to the clinic, and at the clinic, they get supplementation. That's iron supplements and folic acid and calcium. So these 3 are what we call our public health micronutrients that help mothers to have really good, healthy pregnancies. Why is the mother's nutrition so important? It determines the outcome of the pregnancy. If the health is not good, meaning both. For example, our moms who are HIV positive, we know that if they're not in good health, the pregnancy is always under risk or under threat for prematurity if the baby is born before 39 weeks. Or if the baby is born too small, so you heard about low birth weight, then the baby is below 2.5 kilograms. That's a poor outcome. And then we don't like to talk about it, but some pregnancies are not viable. And so moms could carry up to term and then the pregnancy is not viable. And that's a very, very big problem for us in South Africa, is that we have very high stillbirth rates, and we have high levels of prematurity, and we have high levels of low birth weight. So already when the baby is born, it's now starting on the back foot. It has to catch up. And then we only have those 2 years. So the first year, big emphasis on the nutrition part is really around the feeding. And as you know, breastfeeding is the optimal. There's no other way of feeding a baby optimally but to breastfeed exclusively for 6 months. And what does that mean? Nothing but breast milk. No water, no mutinyoni, no gripe water, nothing. Just breast milk. So if our moms can exclusively breastfeed for that first 6 months, they really set up their babies for good health, because in the breast milk is all the immunity that you need. Plus, you get all the optimal nutrition in all the nutrients that you need. And you have less disease, because when you're feeding from the breast or you're feeding express breast milk, there's no room for contamination. If you are feeding alternatively, there's always the water quality that's a problem. The bottles may be dirty. The utensils might be dirty. The milk might stand in the bottle for a long time. So you introduce infection. And then in the next year, which is the year 1 to 2, we really look at the quality of the food. So babies start to eat from 6 months onwards. And then it's the quality of the food. If you are eating pop only for the whole year, obviously you're not going to have a strong immune system. Obviously, you're not going to have strong bones and a good brain. So we talk about the quality of the food from diversity. Many different kinds of foods give you good nutrition. Many different kinds of fruits and vegetables. So introducing the babies to fruits and vegetables early. We often hear moms talking about the cereal, like how important cereal is. But please, moms, you don't need to feed cereal. You can start with a fruit. You can start with butternut. You can start with even banana. So introducing babies early to fruits and vegetables actually helps them to eat more and different kinds of fruits and vegetables. So this is why nutrition is important, because one, it needs for growth. As the body is growing, so is the brain growing. As the body is growing, so is the strength for immunity and fighting disease.
I'm actually, while you're talking, I'm just running through the misconceptions that I know around nutrition with the breastfeeding and starting early with solids. What have you heard? Because I've got ones that are quite crazy to say that no, give the child at least 3 spoons of Nestum. They will sleep longer. What type of misconceptions have you heard that has shocked you?
Oh, Glenda, there are so many of them that are really bad for our babies. So the one that you've touched on is this early feeding. Now, early feeding has come about mostly because we are obsessed about big babies, strong babies, chubby babies, and that is only because we want to have big babies. And so we know already from the research, when mommies are breastfeeding exclusively, their babies are actually smaller than the formula fed babies. And the reason why that is because formula feeding actually comes with extra, let's call it extra energy, because there's a lot more sugar in it. And cows give us more protein, so there are bigger proteins in the formula, and so that gives us bigger babies. But bigger babies also have problems later on. We know that fat babies become fat toddlers, become fat children. And that's not good for our health. Most of our families have somebody who's a diabetic, somebody who's got hypertension. And it actually starts with how we feed our babies. So please, moms, wait until 6 months before you start feeding. We do not need to focus on, fat babies or chubby babies. We want our babies to grow nicely on the Road to Health booklet. You see your growth curve, follow the curve. And thirdly, feeding babies early is not related to brain development, because there is a misconception that if the baby eats well and the baby eats early, it's a clever baby. That's only because people think about reaching the milestones prematurely. Like you eat early, it means you'll walk early. If you eat early, you're going to talk early. That's not true.
I love the fact that you have done research. So, for your focus on child nutrition in South Africa, what has been the findings that has surprised you the most? And what type of policy makers and practitioners have often overlooked, if you look at it from that way?
So I'm going to speak a little bit to the breastfeeding agenda because it's one of the areas that we haven't yet cracked the nut. We need 80%, 100% of our babies to be well breastfed in that first 6 months. The World Health Organization would like countries to be up at 50%. So 50% of all children under 6 months should be exclusively breastfeeding, nothing but breast milk. We're only at 22%. So you can see how very low that is. So what surprised me, one, is that moms do not believe in their own bodies and they don't believe in their own breast milk. There's a very big misconception that if I don't eat well, if I don't eat like they tell me at the clinic, if I happen to be drinking alcohol or I'm smoking or I'm overweight or I'm too thin, my breast milk is not good enough. I want to tell all our mothers, your God-given body makes the best breast milk for your baby. It is uniquely designed and produced for your baby. If your baby is running a fever, your breast milk will increase in fat content because it needs to increase the energy. If your baby has the flu, then when your baby is on the breast, those flu bacteria goes back up into the breast and your body starts to make the antibodies, which is the counteraction for the flu. And your breast milk carries that antibodies to your baby. So it's a natural immunity system between the mother and the child. We talk about the mother and the child and the breast milk like an ecosystem. The baby needs something, the mother's body responds and delivers it in the breast milk. So we call that immunoglobulins. It's a big word, but basically what it means is when your baby's sick, your breast milk will respond to that. So your breast milk is unique. It is 100% perfect. Do not doubt your breast milk. The second one around breastfeeding is that if you breastfeed, you are spoiling the baby. If you put the baby on the breast, oh no, now your boob is like a dummy. No, that's nonsense. What we really want is mothers to have more contact with the babies. We actually found in research internationally and South African research, the more connected a child is to its caregiver, in this case the mother, the more the child's relationship is solidified, is bonded, and the child feels safe. When the child feels safe, the child is able to learn, is able to play, is able to be relaxed. If your child is unsafe, your child is feeling very intimidated, very scared. We talk about abandonment issues, detachment issues, and actually how we overcome that is by bonding, by spending more time with the mother. In Africa, our mothers carry their children on the body for more than 80% of the time in the first 3 months. But now we become very modernized. And what we're doing is we don't spend enough time bonding with our child, holding our child skin to skin. When you breastfeed, your child's cheek is against your breast. So that is called skin to skin. Your child's body, if the child's only in the nappy and you are breastfeeding, your child's body is against your body. So that temperature control is there, that feeling of warmth, that cuddly feeling. Babies need more of that. What we do is we feed artificially. So the baby's lying in the cot feeding. Then we put the child in a car seat. We hardly ever pick up our children. But what we find is that if you breastfeed, you tend to have more contact with your child.
So true on the part where we tend to want to put the kids down. I'm actually guilty of that because it's a misconception to say that when you forever holding the child, the child becomes lazy or the child gets used to being held, and when you need to do some housework, you can't because the child wants to be held. But I understand the psychological level of it, where if the skin to skin happens, there's more there's a bond there, there's trust there, and yeah, I know I'm also guilty. So, with the research that you have done, what is, if you can identify the interventions, right, that constantly improve nutrition outcomes for the under five children? What have you seen that if this happens, it improves the children under five's outcomes?
So when it comes to nutrition and eating, I want to move to the quality of the food. It's a very difficult conversation to have in the context of South Africa because the majority of our mothers are actually dependent on the child support grant. It's very hard to have a good quality diet for children and the mother when the grant is the only income. So for 580 Rand, it's very difficult for moms to actually have a good quality meal every day for 30 days until the grant pays out again. But what we know is that just adding one egg a week to your child's diet. From age 6 months, you can add eggs to the diet. 2, adding a cup of milk, including your own express breast milk. So if you add a cup of milk to all the baby's food, you're mashing the pumpkin or you're mashing the spinach, add your milk to it. Dilute with your milk. It adds protein. So this protein is what we call the bodybuilding nutrient. It builds, like if you think about a house, it's the bricks. So you want to have more bricks and less straw. So actually give that protein. So add a little bit more protein to your child's diet. That means anything that comes from a meat product, an animal product, eggs, meat, even the insides of the chicken, whether it's the matumbas or it's the liver, these are all high quality for children. Small amounts, we're not talking about a whole piece of liver, we're talking about maybe as small as a matchbox. It's 30 grams. So if you think matchbox size of good quality meat, this makes a huge difference to a child's diet. 1 egg a week makes a huge difference to a child's diet. Secondly, lots of fruits and vegetables. If you think about fruits and vegetables, I want you to think about an umbrella. It's the protection. So if you can give your child more fruits and vegetables when you are making the porridge in the morning, let's say you've got some pumpkin from the night before, add the pumpkin to the porridge because now you've added micronutrients. When you're making your child in the afternoon a sandwich, add some vegetables to it. Maybe cut up some tomatoes, cut up some green pepper, whatever you have. Your child can eat. Your child knows all the tastes from the time you were pregnant. So everything you ate, your baby was exposed to it. So that means in taste, it means in smell, it means that your child knows your home diet. It's not that you need special foods. Children are not eating special foods. Children are actually eating the home diet. And from 6 months, we encourage mothers to actually feed from the home pot. So if you're cooking, let's say you're making musho, take out some of the musho, start to mash it down, add in some chicken liver, add in some chicken pieces to it. You can mash it with a grater or with a fork and feed your 6-month-old. When your baby's 9 to 12 months, you can feed it by hand. The texture of the food is also good to feed with the hand. So children are not only developing with the taste, they're also developing with the texture. And we call this sensory development. Many babies and toddlers who don't tolerate sensory foods like oats or corn, you'll see that they walk on their toes because they don't have the sensory development to actually walk like on grass or gravel. So this is why food is also a good way to see your sensory development milestones.
So, could you perhaps talk about the gut health? The reason I'm asking this, the minute your child is sick, in our culture, we immediately say that the gut has a problem and we spade, right? And I do not want to talk about the ingredients that the parents use to do the spading for the child. How important is the gut health for that developing brain? Just talk into that.
So the gut is called the second brain. So we know that if the gut is unhealthy or unhappy, so you're grumbling in the gut, flatulence, which is also called gas. That grumbling sound, that means like wind is running through the stomach. In young children, we call it, I even forgot the word now. It'll come back to me. But we label the children to say, oh, this child is cramping. I'll come back to that word. But we know that two things are happening. One, for the child that is breastfeeding, you have less of that. You have less cramping, you have less, maybe even constipation, maybe even diarrhea, because we know that our children have many bouts of diarrhea. The children specifically, I'm talking about under 2s, but even under 5s. And that's got to do with the tolerance of the diet. Now, some children do have a problem. Maybe the food is too much and you overfeed the baby. It leaves the stomach very bloated. It leaves the stomach very hard. And then the grannies, they are the ones that will say, no, but this one needs to be spat because he didn't pass a stool yet. But it's actually got to do with the fiber content. If the fiber content is too high and you don't drink enough water and our children are not drinking enough water, then you get constipated. We also see this often with our formula-fed babies because formula feeding needs extra water. And if you don't give the extra water, they tend to get bloated and have the constipation. The second thing is make sure that you also understand the food intolerance in the household. If the dad can't tolerate milk and tends to have cramping with milk, and now the child is reacting after eating cereal, you know there's a milk insensitivity. And so some children do have insensitivities. Please pay attention to your toddlers. Sometimes they are what we call picky eaters. They might not want to eat the carrots, so they don't usually eat the carrots. Today you mash it, they spit it out. Tomorrow you cut it up like a finger stick and the child eats it, doesn't like it. You try maybe over a week, 3-4 times. If the child doesn't want it, there's a reason the child doesn't want it. And force feeding is not a good way to teach good nutrition. And it's not a good way to teach your child safety. Because if your child doesn't like something, you keep force feeding it. It overrides the brain to say, my opinion doesn't actually count. And I'm being force fed. So gut health is very important. I can't overestimate about how important breastfeeding is for gut health. I can't overestimate how much the different kinds of foods, like I said, the many different kinds of fruits or vegetables builds gut health. And then gut health is not something that you have to, I almost want to say, intentionally keep thinking about. The more different kinds of foods you feed, the more variety the child has in the diet, the good food practices, not overfeeding, not eating too much at one meal, allowing your child to eat. Many moms like to make sure that their child sit and eat 3 meals. But for under 5s, they can't eat a lot. So you're going to have to feed at least 3 or 4 times. We talk about 5 meals, 3 meals and a snack. That's because the stomach is very small. Look at your baby's hand, the child that you're feeding. That's how big the stomach is. If the plate is much bigger than the stomach, it's been overfed. And secondly, poor quality, too much starches all the time. If we give Millie meal in the morning as a soft porridge and then you give him poroko in the afternoon and then you're making pap and gravy, it's a lot.
Sure.
It's too much.
Sure. Wow. Now I'm turning the wheel into the practitioners, ECD practitioners, and now principals in these schools. How can government support these schools in making sure that they feed the children the right types of food? Bearing in mind it's only 24 Rand per child. If you can just talk about that.
I think it's very hard to really talk to good quality food when you have economic constraints, money constraints, because it's not only in the ECD that there's a constraint. Most households in South Africa are constrained. Even middle income households are constrained by food cost. So you'll see that now households are moving from brands. You might have bought a high quality brand. I don't want to say brands. I don't like to promote brands. But you know, there's a particular rice brand. There's a particular cool beans brand. You like those. But they are just a little bit more expensive. So we move down to house brands. Every shop has their own house brand. So we're moving brands. Then we are moving down from eating rice to milli rice.
Mm.
We are moving from eating meat to chicken and from chicken to matumbes. So you can see that the cost of our meals is causing us to have what we call in research coping mechanisms. But those coping mechanisms are very, very stretched. The advice I want to give to ECD practitioners, please get hold of a copy of the ECD guidelines, and they are the feeding guidelines that are put together by the National Department of Health. It has a menu in there.
Mm.
Those menus help you to ensure the quality of the food. And we usually try to use, if you look at your fingers, I'm going to give you a quick guide. Your fingers will tell you that your middle finger, which is the biggest finger, is the starch. So you've got a bit of starch. Let's say it's rice or it's pasta or it's, yeah, even oats you can be using. Then you want to use your ring finger. This is for your fruits and vegetables. There must be at least 2 fruits and vegetables. And we've taught our moms in lots of the side-by-side discussions, you will see they talk about bringing color into the plate. So maybe there's a green and an orange, beetroot and spinach, or pumpkin and broccoli. So bring in some color. Then you've got one finger, the main finger we talk about is our protein. That is the animal source food. So a piece of chicken, a small meatball, maybe a piece of liver. Many of our ECDs are not serving meat, right? Because it's too expensive. So you will have your soya mince, or you will have just your pasta with a tomato gravy. So there's a lot of opportunity to actually bring in some good quality meat products or animal source products. Tin fish is a great source. And if you bring in once a week tin fish, you're making a huge difference to that child's micronutrient intake. Milk is your thumb. Children under 5 must still get milk. Many ECDs are not serving milk at all. You can use milk in the form of amasi. You can use milk in the form of yogurt. You can use your milk as an addition to maybe you have fruit salad and you are adding your evaporated milk. I know this is a huge expense, but once a week, make sure that you're giving a high quality food. It's really, really difficult when you have such a low amount of money to work with. But we are really talking about a variety of foods, like your hand. And then the very small finger on your hand is actually the fats and the gravies. And we see that in ECDs, to make food taste nice, a lot of the ECDs add fats, wholesome. So when they make the pasta, they add the wholesome. When they make the spinach or the pumpkin, they add cremora. Because it's the one way to make food actually taste nice and be palatable in the mouth. We call about mouthfeel. And this is actually additional fats. Mayonnaise is another thing that I see in ECDs that they use often. So if they didn't use all the rice from yesterday, they make a mayonnaise and just add peas to it. Those are additional fats. And so I've seen some data where we've seen our children who are spending 2 to 3 years in an ECD tend to also increase in weight. Not only by the choice of foods, but also by the portioning. So if you bring a child in that's 1 year old, the 1-year-old is eating the same amount as a 3-year-old. Everybody gets 1 spoon. So if that 1-year-old is now in the ECD up until age 3, you can see how much food that child has been eating. Very high in calories, very high in starches, and it tells on the body.
I'm glad that you actually brought up the weight gain, because that's also something that we have seen on the centers that receive nutrition and they're cooking consistently, using the menu that is dedicated, and also the retention of focus of the children when doing the work is much better compared to when they were not being fed at the center. So the nutrition plays quite a huge role in making educating much easier for even the practitioners themselves.
Look, Glenda, you know how you feel when you're hungry. We even
There's
have
no
words
focus.
like hangry. So because we're hungry, we become angry. When we're hungry, we become agitated. When we're hungry, we start to lose focus. And this is also one of the reasons why we have the National School Feeding Program, because the National School Feeding Program also recognized that children can't concentrate long enough. Children are agitated. There's a lot of fidgetiness, and it's because children are in a state of Again, stress. Hunger is a stressor. Hunger is trauma. And so when you want high functioning cognitive level, we must have our sugar levels up. The minute the sugar levels drop, that's when you become sleepy. That's when you become disengaged, when you're not able to learn. And in fact, when you go to conferences, I know your practitioners go to training and they go to conferences. We feed you because you have tea and then you have lunch and then you have a snack. Part of that is also because when sugar levels are up, your cognitive levels are much higher and your information retention is actually better when your sugar levels are up. When your sugar levels are down, you can't actually retain information. So yes, it's very much part of the learning process. And I think we also know that from when Equal Education took the government during the COVID, when they stopped giving the nutrition program, is that food is part of the learning package. You can't learn on an empty stomach.
Sure. So if you could change one policy based on your research findings that you have done, I know you've done a number of things. What would it be and why?
I think it's not one thing.
There's many.
There's many things, right? So like your hand, if you want to really hold this glass, you need all those fingers. And all of those fingers for children under 5 is actually in the Road to Health booklet. Those 5 pillars is nutrition, it's love, protection, routine care. When you bring your child to the clinic to be weighed, and if your child falls, you bring your child to the clinic, and then extra care, which means if your child has got extra needs, you need to have extra care. And we have a lot of children who have extra needs because we're coming out of a traumatic state of being. Our communities are under stress. There's lots of gender-based violence. There's lots of violence in communities. And so extra care is about psychosocial support. So what would I want to change? Across the board, whole of society, if we could put children first, all our policies should be child-friendly. Not only child-friendly spaces, but also child-friendly policies that put children first. For example, in the food system, we know mothers can't afford the food, right, that children need. But if you were able to shop with your SASA card, which entitles you to a subsidized basket or entitles you to a discounted basket, you'd be able to stretch your money a little further. That means across all shops, not just one shop. Because as a government, we're putting our children first, which means the children that are on the ground are our priorities. 2, we need child-friendly spaces for children to play, to have creativity, to have music, to have art, to have body movement. It's impossible to ask a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old to sit still in one space when you don't have enough space. So we need to be creating spaces. And I mean, in all spaces, back home, whether it's in an urban township, in a rural township, in a squatter camp, plant plants because your children will engage with the plant. Your children need to be able to find spaces that are beautiful places. It's not about going to an ECD and all the walls are painted pretty. It means about making spaces that are appealing to our children as well. Please make sure you have child safety, not only just when you're in the car and buckle your seatbelt, but actually in all the spaces that we find ourselves. Will our children fall over it? Will our children cut themselves? If the fence is broken, fix the fence because that's a place of injury. And our children under 5 are having high levels of injury. So it's not just about taking care of nutrition, it's taking care of the whole child. So putting children first and in all the spaces that we find ourselves is make sure it works for children. That's what I do. If I'm in a space talking about anything, whether it's business development, women's development, my go-to is, will it work for children? Because if it works for children, it will work for everybody else.
Oh, wow, I love that. I would love for you to give a message to our parents in closing. What would it be? Just share your last words with parents right now.
So parents, I say this to myself as well because I'm a parent. You are doing a great job. You are doing the best that you can. And you are so absorbed with trying to provide for your child that you forget to love your child. We need to engage with our children a lot more, not only when they become delinquent and they become problematic, but actually spending time with your child, hugging your child. If I challenge you every day, make time to hug your child, make time to say, I love you, make time for your child to know that you see them. Because children aren't burdens, children are actually gifts. And I think we need to be treating them a little bit more as gifts. And this is not a nutrition message, but this is to our parents to say that, like you feed the body, you need to feed the mind and the soul. And that means seeing your child for who they are. And every day, please hug your child and please tell them you love them.
That was a good reminder for me as well. Did I hug my kids this morning? Not sure. Can't remember, did I? I think I said I love you as they go into the school.
Oh, good, good. That's how it should be.
Yeah, so thank you again for listening to this conversation. Please continually sending messages and let us know what is it that you want to hear more about so that we can find the relevant people to keep educating you. So yeah, let's see you in the next conversation. Thank you for now.